Education. We have educational breakfasts every Friday, the third Friday of every month, and those are recorded. So you can go to YouTube. Democrats of the Red Rocks or DORR has a YouTube channel, and every one of those breakfasts is appearing there. And so you can see you can learn a lot if you head to that YouTube channel.
Tell them what time and where.
The breakfasts are usually at the community center at 9:30, the third Friday of every month. And they're very interesting, and it helps us build community, and we really enjoy that, and we appreciate people coming. How many people got their ballots yesterday? Two, three. You know who it is? It's Coconino County. You're in Yavapai. Yavapai hasn't gotten them. I'm hoping today. Oh, here's Marie. She got her ballot too. So yes, I think they should be arriving today or tomorrow, which is great and very, very exciting. At this point, our campaigns are pivoting from persuasion to get out the vote. Getting out the vote is the name of the game. If our people don't show up at the polls, we can't win. We need everybody. And what we also need everybody to do is vote all the way up and down the ballot. Don't ignore the things you don't know. So, for example, and a lot of people do that. It's called drop off. They vote for president and vice president, and then their ballots are empty. And it's horrible because things like the Corporation Commission have so much to do with our daily lives, so much to do with our daily lives and the energy use in the state and the taxes and what we pay for energy. And it's important to go all the way up and down the ballot. And for example, the Corporation Commission came and spoke to us. Almost every single candidate that is on our ballot guide has appeared before the DORR breakfasts at one time or another. So you can find them all. We could not get Kamala Harris, unfortunately, so she has not been a guest at the DORR breakfast. And I have a feeling that if Kamala came, then the parking lot at the coffee pot restaurant would be full of people who are headed to Mary Fish Theater. But that is not the case. We, meaning Democrats of the Red Rocks again, sent out a ballot cheat sheet, a ballot guide, and it has the propositions, it has the candidates, it has the judges. These things are great to have. And we sent them to everyone in Supervisory District 3, a pretty broad swath of all Democrats and the Republicans, independents that are sort of left leaning. We sent thousands, almost 10,000 of those out. And then our canvassers are handing out this ballot cheat sheet, which is the same exact thing as is on your guide. And these things are not easy to put together. It's a lot of work. Our volunteers have been fabulous. A woman named Janine Reno does a lot of our research. We do a lot of research and investigating of candidates, of propositions, of judges to make sure that we are comfortable with the recommendations that we put out there. And so when you get them, when you see them, use them. So these, we call them ballot cheat sheets, ballot guides, whatever you want. Those tell you who DORR recommends you vote for. We also recommend that you do your own research, dig a little deeper. And so everyone in here probably has one of these ballot guides, ballot cheat sheets. However, you are here today because you're prompted by the question, yeah, why? Why should I vote these people, these propositions? You are the informed, serious voter, which makes you probably a trusted advisor to a lot of your friends and neighbors. They know you're more plugged in than the average bear. And so if they have questions, help them out. Call the DORR office. There are so many resources. The ballot guide, for anyone who doesn't have it, is on the DORR website, the whole thing up and down. And there's actually additional people on that as well that didn't make it to the ballot guide, like the people on the school board for Mingus Union. So please take that role of yours seriously and help people get to the polls, get to vote early, and to fill out the entire ballot. So let me tell you what's happening on Monday. You probably know, but just in case not, we are having a parade to the polls. We did this 4 years ago and it was a big success and so much fun. We meet up at Posse Ground Park at 9 a.m. We decorate our cars. Noreen Ireland is sitting right here and she is with our Indivisible group after the march. And she's been coordinating this whole thing and been living Parade to the Polls for weeks. We have signs, we have magnetic signs, we have flags, we have banners, all kinds of stuff. We will decorate our cars. We will meet with the new addition to our parade, which is the Reproductive Freedom Tour Bus that has been touring the whole United States for the Harris Walls campaign, touting reproductive rights. And they are coming here to Sedona and will be here for our parade. And we will probably get a couple of speeches, although we're not urging long speeches because this is in addition to our agenda here, which is decorating cars. We will then proceed in a caravan down Posse Grounds to City Hall, where we will deposit our completed ballots, which we have completed by that date. We have signed and sealed, and we will put them in the ballot box. We'll take a picture of you with your phone so you can put it on your social media. We'll take a picture with our phone so we can put it on our social media. The message is vote early, use the ballot boxes. In Arizona, those votes are picked up daily, and they are starting to count them as soon as they come in. Some states don't start counting until November the 5th. Our state, we're lucky. So those early results that you'll see right after the polls close, those are our early votes. So please, please do that. We are having a watch party the night of November 5th. I'm not going to say watch party / celebration because I did that once already and I got burned. So we're not going to do that again. It's going to be a great party and we're going to have a terrific time and celebrate the victories and celebrate the many, many, many volunteers that we have that make this such a wonderfully progressive and active community. People like Ben Shore, who's here, who collects our money for every one of these events. People like Pat Corrington, who when we said, we have a volunteer who's coming here and needs housing. And she said, I'll take him. And she took this stranger into her house and now they're really cutest couple in the theater, I think, right now. So I want you to hear from, I'll just make sure that I haven't skipped anything. One of the advantages, there are many advantages to voting early and by mail, but one of them is, this ballot is very long. I haven't seen it, so I don't know quite how long. Did you see, Marie? Is it too? Okay, yeah.
I checked the mail this morning. So
okay, so we've got it. It's going to be very long, which means the lines at the polls are also going to be very long because they're going to move very slowly. So even if people bring our cheat sheet into the polls with them, just checking everything off will take time. So don't wait till you have to go to the polls. If you wake up that morning and you feel bad and you don't want to go out, you think you have a cold or something, you can't skip this election. So we urge everybody to vote early. Okay, there's two people I would like you to meet before we get into our serious business of looking at this ballot and the propositions and the judges. First is Atu Asan. Atu, come on up, Atu, is an amazing person. And I want him to introduce himself and tell you why. And I told him 2 minutes because we're so limited here, but he has come here from England. So I want you to hear his story.
Okay. Thank you, Ellen. Hi, I'm Atu Hassan. I'm a retired director of strategic delivery for the National Health Service in England. Although retired, I do some consultancy work for them from time to time. I have 2 kids and a partner, and I'm here to support Kamala Harris. The question you might reasonably ask yourself is why? Actually, the answer is in 2016. In England, we had a a ballot whether to leave the European Union or stay there. And at the time, we all thought that the Remain in the EU would win. So by any metric, there was no way we were going to leave the European Union, but we did, and I did nothing. So I said, never again. So looking at the US, I could see that Biden was still wanting to be president, and I was worried, but I hoped he would win. But when Kamala came in and spoke on the 23rd of July, I sat up to 1 a.m. that morning, and I listened to her speech. My partner was asleep, and I woke her up and said, I'm going to the States. I'm going to help Kamala campaign and win. She says, no, we have to talk about it in the morning. I said, no, I'm going. So by the morning, the decision was made. So here I am supporting Kamala. But this is the thing. I think the US elections now are the most consequential in the history of America. And we've seen Donald Trump's first term, and culminating in January the 6th. I saw it in England, and we don't want the same thing again. Watching Kamala, I thought she hit all the right notes. She said she was for the law, that she was building up the middle class, that she was a prosecutor going to prosecute the defendant Trump. And I thought, yeah, I like all the what she was talking about. But most of all, she was going to be a president for all of America. And for me, that clinched it. So I was bang on the plane to visit here. I am lucky, though, in being in Sedona. I'm working with some great team here. And Ellen and her team in DORR, the national team, Tyler, and amazing host, Pat, and my canvassing mate, Sally. We do lots of canvassing. So I think I'm plugged in now. And the whole objective is to get Kamala to win. And that is why I'm here. And I hope together we can make Kamala the next president of the USA. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That was terrific. That kind of motivation, that's wonderful. I don't see anybody at all coming from England to do what he's doing because they love Donald Trump. That's not going to happen. The next person I'd like to introduce to you is Tyler Ripito. Tyler also left his family and is here in Sedona working for the Harris Walz campaign. He has a wife and 2 young children in Boulder, Colorado. And yet he has come here to campaign because this is where the campaign needed him. So he is helping with running our canvassing campaign and door-to-door, and texting and phone banking and things like that. He's working with Diana Christensen, our vice president. And Tyler, why don't you come up and just tell people what you still need.
Stand right with your feet, each foot in there.
Thank you, Ellen. I appreciate it. I thought I was a big deal last time I was here because I had also left 2 children and my wife in Colorado, but one up me. But I'm very grateful to have it too. And I'm going to keep this short, but what I really would ask of everybody is that we don't make Atu's journey or my journey or all the work that Ellen has put in or the wonderful things that Sally and Pat have done for the campaign to be in vain. So we've got, 27 days? 25 days? Oh, right. yeah. Thank you, Curtis. We've got 25 days left. And after November 5th, there's not going to be another chance for us to do anything to stop Donald Trump and to elect Democrats and to restore some sanity in this country. So I'm going to pass around some sign-up sheets in a few minutes. We're in the process at the coordinated campaign run by the Arizona Democratic Party of doing our Get Out the Vote operation. And we need all the help we can get. And our data has shown us year after year that the best possible way to do that, to get that vote out, is to knock on doors. And so I'm asking everybody to join us for those canvasses over the next few weeks, particularly on Saturdays and Sundays. But if you want to go out during the week, I can make that happen. We can make that happen. If you can't walk, if you're too shy to knock on a door, there's plenty of other things you can do to help support that canvas. And we need all of you and doing everything you can in the next 25 days. So that's what I've got for right now. And I appreciate the time, Ellen. Thank you. Oh, and vote yes on 139, please. Let's end the confusion.
Yes, let me vote yes on 139. By the way, that reminds me, thanks, Tyler. We have lawn signs out in the front. We have lawn signs at the DORR office. We have some more of these. If you have friends you want to secretly leave them in their front door, or whatever you want, please come to the DORR office. That's why we have this office. And the office is staffed year-round, year in and year out. We will be there next year. We will be building the ground game for the next election year. And so it's really important that you support organizations like DORR, boots on the ground. It's a tough job. We have all volunteers except now we hired one person, Kathy Ransom, who's in the office and is wonderful. So please come by and get whatever you want. If you have questions, we are a great resource. Please use us and please refer your friends and neighbors to us. Okay, we have 3 people who are going to help explain the ballot propositions and judges to you, because that seems to be the most confusing. If you have questions, please raise your hand. The first person is Melinda Ayer. She is with an organization, a nonprofit called Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. And CEBV is what we call it, Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. They are actually an indivisible group. We have a very active indivisible group in Arizona, where there are 35 different groups around the state. Melinda is the person who does the research for our request to speak. Remember those? We only do that when the legislature is in session. They research bills that we can comment on that are before committees in the House and Senate of the legislature. Melinda does amazing research. She tells us what to do and how to do it and answers our questions. So she is an expert renowned in the state and is wonderful, and we love her. The next speaker will be Annette Spicknard. Annette is city manager for Sedona and will explain the local propositions that are on your ballot. And Kathy Kinsella, councilwoman, who is also on the city, obviously city council, and she will explain other ballot propositions and funding and things like that. So we have a full program. So I am so thrilled to have Melinda Ayer here in Sedona with us. It's terrific. So please welcome her and feel free to ask her questions.
Hi, good morning, everyone. All right, so thank you for joining us on this beautiful Friday morning. Okay, so first of all, I'm Melinda. I'm with Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. How many of you are familiar with CEBV? Okay, great. We are an indivisible group. We track state level politics, including but not limited to the state legislature and your state ballots. And we, in 2018, we started giving recommendations for the ballots on the propositions and the judges, because we found that those were the areas where people were the most confused and needed support with information. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to start by talking about Gavel Watch. This is a huge need, and we have found that people get decision paralysis and are afraid to turn in their ballots, because what do we do with all these judges? And if you have a team of 4 volunteers willing to devote 6 months of time, you too can have your own Gavel Watch, because all the information is publicly available. But thankfully, we have a team spearheaded by our co-founder, Kathy Sigmund, that does all that research and pulls it together. Next slide. The selection and retention system is something that started here in the state of Arizona. It was championed by former U.S. Supreme Court Justice and former Arizona state lawmaker, Sandra Day O'Connor. It's now called the merit system. 19 states across the US use it, but Arizona's system remains the gold standard. It was a constitutional amendment that was passed by voters in 1974. It was limited to counties of over 250,000 in population, or counties that opted in via an initiative. And Coconino County did that in 2018. So Coconino County has merit retention elections. We need to keep an eye on Yavapai County because the population is hovering on the edge of 250,000. So it's very likely that Yavapai will be joining this system very soon. Other counties still hold partisan elections. Next slide, please. So the judicial retention system is a critical part of the merit system. A later constitutional amendment in the 90s established the judicial performance review process. They do evaluate judges, but CEBV feels that their recommendations alone are insufficient to recommend or, for or against judges. And part of the reason is that they don't release poor and unsatisfactory ratings. Especially this cycle, they decided that all the judges were just fine and should be all retained. And the number of surveys returned is pretty low. For Christopher Curry, who's a Maricopa County judge, just 51 surveys were returned. Some response tallies are as low as 5 or even 1. It's truly impossible to get a full reading with that number of responses. If you could see the detail, you would note that the poor and unacceptable ratings when they come back are pretty alarming. But that's not the only reason that we would recommend against judges. We also look at the bias that they bring to the bench. So every judge brings a point of view to their work. Judges are human beings. We're all human beings. We all have inherent bias. And governors tend to select judges who agree with their own political perspective. Former Governor Doug Ducey spent 8 years packing the courts. He appointed a ton of judges. He expanded the state Supreme Court from 5 to 7 justices against the wishes of every sitting judge at that time. And then there's the Federalist Society, which is an ultra-conservative organization that has made it its mission to push the courts to the right. So we look at things like Federalist Society membership, as well as other publicly available information. Next slide, please. Other publicly available information. Go ahead and skip that slide. That's very in the weeds. Social media, newspaper articles, financial disclosures. It's a project that anybody could do, like I said. And of course, we factor in the JPR reports. It is a lot of information. Next slide. We do encourage you, if you are so inclined, to click through to our full Gavel Watch. And that is available. If you only write down one thing from my presentation, write down azvoterguide.us. And that will redirect you to our full research and methodology for everything that I'm going to talk about today. Propositions, state level, county level, judges, all of it. But this is the full Gavel Watch, and you can see our rationale. We never recommend for or against a judge based on a single decision. That's not how we work. We look at a whole background of a judge. There are about a dozen judges statewide where we recommend a do not retain, but there are other judges that have backgrounds that were of concern. And so we would say yes with reservations, because we had concerns about those justices, but we didn't feel that it rose to the level of, yes, this person needs to lose their job immediately. But if you read the rationale, you may find that for you, that person is a no vote. So we do encourage you to click through and look at the full information. Next slide. So yeah, let's skip this one because it's America. Okay, so Arizona Supreme Court justices are a special case. Our recommendations are based on multiple criteria, as you can see here. Remember, Governor Ducey expanded the Supreme Court so he could appoint more ideological justices. Clint Bolick was one of the beneficiaries. He's fought for education privatization. He's worked for the Libertarian Goldwater Institute and ALEC. ALEC is the American Legislative Exchange Council, which produces corporatist, right-wing copycat bills for state legislatures all around the country. He was a vote on what we consider to be the wrong side of the 1864 abortion ban issue. He voted to uphold that ban. He was on what we consider to be the wrong side of a lesser known but pivotal case, Brush and Nib, which allowed individuals to discriminate against LGBTQ+ individuals. Catherine King is the other justice who will be up for retention this cycle. She is a proud member of the Federalist Society. She is a staunch Catholic who refuses to penalize abortion. She's former Governor Ducey's Deputy General Counsel, or was. And so we feel also that there is a history of bias, of concern with both of these justices. Next slide, please. So this is our ballot graphic, which you can find at the website that I shared. It includes our do not retain recommendations and our recommendations on propositions. You'll notice that we have a second slide or a second side to the graphic, which may apply to some of you. There's some Coconino recommendations on there. We are looking at recommending against candidates who are election deniers for running our elections. And that includes the county boards of supervisors and the county recorders. Next slide. Okay, I am going to switch over to covering the propositions now, but I want to give a special shout out to this one. Prop 137 would eliminate that judicial retention system that I spoke about. And the rationale seems to be, oh gosh, the ballot is long. Voters don't need to worry their silly little heads about all these judges, which I personally find insulting. And there's a lot of bad parts about this, but in my opinion, the worst aspect of this is that it is retroactive. So even if voters decide not to retain Justices Bullock and King, if they also pass this, Prop 137, those votes would be thrown out and both justices would stay in office. So, in my opinion, pretty transparently designed to protect certain people's jobs, which we feel is unacceptable. We already know what an unaccountable judiciary looks like. We have the US Supreme Court. We don't need to be replicating that on the state level. Next slide.
We're passing out the ballot guide, so
Oh,
you
great.
can just follow along.
All right, now on to the propositions. So as Ellen mentioned, your ballots are going to be unprecedentedly long. I don't know if that's a word, but it is now. 2 cards, front and back on each card. So a total of 4 pages. And I haven't seen a sample ballot for up here, but in Maricopa County, where I live, the entire second card, front and back, is propositions. So, we are here to talk about those with you to prevent what they call ballot drop-off. And it is noted that 60% of Republicans fill out their entire ballot. Only 27% of Democrats do. So ballot drop-off is a real issue. And, we're here to provide information to support you as you fill out your whole ballot. Next slide, please. So we're going to start with talking about Prop 133. This one asks voters to enshrine Arizona's current partisan primary system into the state constitution. And I would note that anything that begins with a 1, so any proposition where the number begins with a 1 is a constitutional amendment. So this would be cemented into the state constitution. And it does come from the most extreme voices in our legislature. It's designed to ensure that the more extreme candidates prevail. So I will use the example of not former yet, but about to be former Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richer. So this is a candidate who enjoys broad bipartisan support, but he could not make it through his own Republican primary. Republican primary voters bumped him off in favor of an election denier. So that is very concerning and something that we need to keep a close eye on. Prop 133 would guarantee that that trend continues. It also blocks any meaningful reforms like ranked choice or top two primary voting. This is a legislature that loves to tell us what to do, and Prop 133 is more of that. It is unfair to independent voters who have to proactively ask for their partisan primary ballots. And it conflicts with Prop 140, which I will discuss later. A lot of people ask me what happens if they both pass. So if they do both pass, whichever one gets the most votes will win. And if neither passes, we will be left with the status quo. Although I understand that there is a ranked choice voting initiative lining up for 2026. So there are 13 propositions on your ballot, and I'm not about to make you hold your questions until the end of all of that. So if anybody either here in the auditorium or on Zoom has questions on Prop 133, I will take those at this time, and Holly has a mic if anybody has any questions.
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. All right, so we'll skip ahead, and if there are no questions, if there are questions, we can always circle back. But on to Prop 134, so next slide, great. This would restrict Arizona's initiative and referendum process. This is a process that is in the state constitution. It has been present since the founding of our state. Arizona's founders felt that this was very important, that citizens also have the power to make their own laws. Our legislature has been restricting this process continuously for at least the last decade, and they have reached the point where they cannot restrict it any further without amending the state constitution. So this constitutes them asking us to vote our rights away, okay? This would force citizen initiatives to collect signatures not just from a percentage of voters, but from a percentage of voters in each of Arizona's 30 legislative districts. So this is not how the legislature passes laws, right? They just need a simple majority. They don't need a lawmaker in every district to vote for a law in order to pass it. So this would be unequal. It also blocks citizen voices. So all that a well-funded dark money group would have to do to sink an initiative would be to send a team of protesters to a small legislative district, like Safford, or to the city, and get people to harass circulators and discourage people from signing. If they were not able to meet that 10 or 15% threshold, no matter how many people signed in the rest of the state, that initiative would not qualify for the ballot. The reason why they're doing this, of course, is that there are politicians who do not want citizens making their own laws, because typically things that are put onto the ballot by citizens circumvent the legislature's wishes, and they don't like that. It is happening in other states as well, particularly red states like Missouri, Idaho, and Ohio, largely in response to the same issue of citizens going around them to enact our own laws. I want to leave you with a quote from the Brennan Center for Justice. State officials' efforts to thwart citizen initiatives do not take shape in isolation. They are part of a larger anti-democracy blueprint, yet another example of state officials trying to manipulate the rules of elections and obstruct the will of voters. So that's Prop 134. Are there questions about this one?
Boo.
Boo is right. All right, next slide. So Prop 135 asks us to take away the governor's special powers to make an emergency declaration after 30 days and would instead require the legislature to come into session and vote to extend those powers. So Arizona currently has 41 open federal emergency declarations. This proposition exempts fires and floods, which make up the vast majority of emergency declarations, but it doesn't exempt drought. Okay, and we've had a drought declaration in place since 1999. Under this proposition, and we do receive federal funding to manage our drought. And under this proposition, our lawmakers would be forced to get together every 30 days and argue about whether climate change is real before we could get that federal funding. So that's kind of ridiculous. It endangers public safety. We can't wait around for politicians to argue. When there's a true emergency, we need to be able to act. So maybe the worst part of this one is that it would allow a 1/3 minority of the legislature to call themselves into session. And to put that in perspective, roughly 1/3 of our legislature are election deniers. So I don't know about you, but I don't want those people calling themselves into special session whenever they want. That is a no from me. So I'm recommending no on Prop 135. And you may be sensing a theme at this point. Are there questions about 135? All right, next slide. 136. This is another one that touches citizen initiatives. This would allow anyone, what they call qualified elector. So if you're registered to vote in the state of Arizona, you are a qualified elector, and you would be able to sue to knock a citizen initiative off the ballot, even before it makes it on the ballot, on the grounds that it is not constitutional. If the plaintiffs can get a judge to agree with them, it would not matter how many people had signed that petition. The initiative would not qualify for the ballot. So this means, how many of you here have circulated initiative petitions like the Arizona Abortion Access? So yeah, so you guys know what a hair on fire time that is. For circulating petitions, and how focused your attention has to be. This would require campaigns to simultaneously run their ground game of circulating petitions and defend in court against lawsuits at the same time. Fundraising to do both things and doing both things at the same time. So this is just another obstacle that stands in the way of us making our own laws, which we've already discussed, certain politicians don't like. And this only applies to citizen initiatives, not legislative referrals. So it's different rules for us and for politicians. Politicians can continue loading the ballot while they put this obstacle in our way. So we are recommending a no on 136. Any questions on 136?
Do you think would it ever be possible?
Would it ever be possible to succeed with another citizens initiative if this is passed?
That is a really good question. And, every roadblock that gets thrown up by the legislature, people say, this is the end. This is, this would make running a citizens initiative virtually impossible. And somehow candidates campaigns keep managing, but it is getting progressively more difficult, more expensive. And it would be very, very difficult. And we already discussed the courts and that they have become politicized. And so allowing the courts to step in this manner is a real danger. Thank you for the question. All right, next slide, Prop 137. We've already sort of talked about this one. If you've attended a single CEBV happy hour call, you've heard me rant about it. I really don't like this one. Basically eliminating retention elections for judges, giving them broad latitude to stay on the ballot until age 70 or under a very limited set of circumstances, such as if they are convicted of a felony, which, you know, we're not going to see that happen. So once in a blue moon, you might see a judge on your ballot. I discussed that it shields judges from public accountability and it's written retroactively. It's just a really bad idea. Any questions on 137?
So the judges that are on the ballot today, would this affect them?
Yes, so her question is the judges that are on the ballot today, would it affect them? And yes, the fact that it is written retroactively means no matter if we pass this, it does not matter how we vote on the judges that are on our ballots now. They would all stay in office. Okay, moving forward to Prop 138. This would create a sub-minimum hourly wage for tipped workers. It would bring wages for tipped workers down to $10.76 an hour. Right now they get $11.35 per hour. Obviously, that change benefits the restaurants financially and not workers. It is backed by restaurant industry lobbyists. I tracked this proposition when it was a bill moving through the legislature. The Arizona Restaurant Association created a fake grassroots organization to shepherd this bill through the legislature. These are the same lobbyists who also oppose minimum wage and sick leave protections for restaurant staff. And unbelievably, they are calling it the Tipped Workers Protection Act. And I have seen a few of these signs up here. They're all over Maricopa County. You know, signs that say yes on 138, you know, with pictures of smiling restaurant workers who are super happy to see their wages being slashed. So please don't be fooled on this one. I consider it to be tantamount to wage theft. And the gap would continue widening as the minimum wage goes up because, you know, that's how this is structured. And as they say, the math just doesn't math. So do we have questions about 138?
Can you repeat the
Amount per hour?
Yes, so it would bring wages for tipped workers down to $10.76 an hour. Right now they get $11.35 an hour. And it's calculated all based on percentages and, you know, there's backfilling that would happen, and it is written to be convoluted. And if you really care to dig into that, CEBV has linked some articles in our proposition explainer via that website that I gave you. But it would reduce wages for tipped workers and the gap would continue to grow as time went on.
So Melinda,
I can hear you.
okay, considering that there's been some on the national level, some discussion about not having income tax on tips. Do you think people will get confused between that and this initiative?
I do. So there's also been discussion about not taxing overtime, but those same people have talked about eliminating overtime. So it's a really neat trick. Like, we're not going to tax you on the money we're not going to give you. So don't be fooled. All right, next slide. Finally, a good one. You know, I collected signatures for this one. I know many of you also did. Prop 139 guarantees a fundamental right to receive abortion care until viability, which is around 24 weeks. After that point, there are exceptions if a healthcare provider deems it necessary to protect the life, physical, or mental health of their patient. We have a legislature that has spent about the last 2 decades systematically chipping away at the right to abortion care. There are over 40 laws on the books, in addition to our current 15-week ban, that would be basically overturned if Prop 139 passes. Everything from mandatory waiting periods to mandatory ultrasounds. You know, they keep trying to restrict medication abortions and make that illegal. When we put this right in the state constitution, that means extreme politicians cannot restrict our rights anymore without our approval. And that is a powerful thing. Currently, the 15-week ban that we are under includes jail time for doctors of up to 2 years. Many pregnancy complications are not detectable until about 20 weeks, and I know this from personal experience. So if you have one of those, complicated pregnancies, doctors would then be forced to wonder, under our current law, do I leave this woman close to death? There's been a rise in infant deaths in states like Texas with really severe bans, women being forced to carry pregnancies that are incompatible with life. And a doctor should never have to wonder how close to death a woman should be before they can provide care. For me, that's the bottom line. And so, yes, on 139. And I know that that is DORR's position as well. Are there any questions about 139? All right, then we will move on. Next slide. So you may be surprised by our recommendation here because CEBV supports ranked choice voting, and we would like to see some reforms to our partisan primary system. But we consider Prop 140 to be fatally flawed, so we are recommending a no vote. This proposition would open primaries to voters, all voters, regardless of party affiliation. That's great. All candidates would appear on the same ballot, a single ballot, regardless of party. Great. And our state lawmakers would get to decide how many candidates go on the ballot. That is the part where they lose me. I consider that to be a fatal flaw. Politicians decide too much. So for one-person offices like governor, they would be able to choose between 2 and 5 candidates to advance to the ballot. If the legislature fails to act, the decision is then made by a single politician, which is the Secretary of State. So imagine if Mark Fincham had won his election. Thank you. As Secretary of State. Like, you can't tell me that he would not find a way to, these are very nefarious, very creative people. And you cannot tell me that he would not find a way to exploit that power. So this is a no from us. Having worked with these guys for 8 years, I would never expect good intentions from them. And, the creators of this initiative are fully aware of what they've done. The Measures Main spokesman says, and I quote, and this is in regard to lawmakers, "We really don't care what they do because anything is better than the current system." So I would argue that this is not in fact better than the current system. This measure carries a host of unforeseen consequences. We cannot support it. We have been told that ranked choice voting is planning to advance an initiative to the ballot for 2026. And, I wish Prop 140 had just gone ahead with straight ranked choice voting, but they didn't. So I am going to vote no on this one and wait for 2026 for some properly designed reform. Are there questions on 140? So Holly will bring the mic to you.
So this would be a constitutional amendment.
That's correct. It would be a constitutional amendment.
And what would it take to amend that amendment or to remove it? Because it seems like 137 is attempting to change our constitution in a similar way.
So
if we get this in, can we get ranked choice voting in next time?
So yes, we if we get this in and then ranked choice voting goes, as long as it's written to amend or supersede these sections of the Constitution, it would be able to take effect. That's not a chance that I'm willing to take. I'm very uncomfortable with the amount of power that this gives to partisan politicians. Constitutional amendments are extremely extremely difficult to undo. In addition to the Voter Protection Act, which we have here in Arizona, which requires that if state lawmakers want to change a voter-approved initiative, they can do so only with a 3/4 supermajority. It's hard to get 3/4 of our current legislature to agree that the sky is blue. So that's a really high number. And then only if it furthers the purpose of the initiative. So passed, done, really, really hard to change without going back to voters. And I've already discussed the time and expense hurdles that exist there.
Melinda, thank you. It seems as if there are a number of appealing parts to this proposition, and I wonder what you think the prospects are of it passing.
I think that it's likely that it will pass because it's been written. It's confusing. And I speak to people, I've been all over the state, and I speak to people who did not know about the provision that allows our state lawmakers to choose. And when I tell them, your state lawmakers, you know, Representative Mark Fincham or Representative Gwen or, you know, those guys get to pick how many candidates against, they go, oh, you know, but people don't know that. That's part of why I'm here talking to you today. We have a question up here in the front. And remember, if you're on Zoom and you have questions, just type them in the chat.
This is probably a really, push it up, put down.
This is probably a really naive question, but have these propositions always been written this covertly?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is that they have gotten more so. You know, our legislature has a long history of feeling that they know better than, you know, us silly little voters who don't know anything at all. And they do not want us passing our own laws, you know, having power. You know, some of these lawmakers have introduced bills to take us back to the system from the Gilded Age, from the 1800s, where our US senators were appointed. We've had lawmakers who have passed or who have introduced bills that would allow the legislature to overturn elections. That they have some serious power issues. And I really don't feel that we should be giving them any more power than they currently have. Okay, I got a motor. I've just been told I have 10 minutes. So next slide. So from here, these are all statutory changes. These would not go in the state constitution. This would just change state law, but the Voter Protection Act would still apply. Prop 311, this would tack a $20 fee onto every criminal conviction for families of first responders who are killed in the line of duty. This sounds great in theory. These families are already very, very well taken care of by the federal government, state pension plans, individual agencies that provide life insurance to their members, private entities. They get very generous benefits, including tuition waivers, health insurance, funeral expenses, and other forms of one-time and ongoing assistance. This money would be on top of all of that. You may say, that's fine, we can't put a price on supporting our first responders, except that this money comes from a surcharge added to the fines of people convicted of criminal offenses, most of which are misdemeanors. These are people who already pay plenty of fines and penalties for their convictions. This would disproportionately affect the people in our society who have the least to give. And it also contains a provision instituting bypassing judicial discretion and instituting mandatory sentencing by boosting penalties for assaulting a first responder. Civic Engagement Beyond Voting has long opposed mandatory sentencing. It doesn't keep us safer. It is inflexible by design. It doesn't let judges do their jobs. What it does do is keep people in prison longer, which, means that we spend more tax dollars on private prisons here in the state of Arizona. Also disproportionately affecting people of color. So I would argue that the time to help our first responders is while they're alive, not after they're dead. Last year, our legislature passed a bill to give free counseling to 911 dispatchers who had helped with a traumatic event. Let's do more of that. Let's help these people while they're alive with good wages, childcare assistance, tuition reimbursement, mental health supports, and not waiting until after they're dead to do it, and not doing it on the backs of the poor. So this is a no from me. Questions on 311? All right, next slide. Prop 312. This one would force cities and counties to give property tax refunds to property owners if the county or city doesn't adequately enforce laws that criminalize homelessness. So this might include things like illegal camping, obstructing public thoroughfares, loitering, panhandling. This measure is designed to penalize cities financially. It is not designed to fix homelessness or make encampments go away. And in fact, it doesn't do those things. There's no funding for job training programs or enforcement or shelter beds. What it will do, though, is raise taxes. And here's why. If cities have to give some taxpayers refunds, that reduces the amount of revenue that cities have available. So then they have a choice. Do we cut services because we don't have the money anymore to pay for them? Or do we raise taxes on the rest of the taxpayers who didn't get refunds? So, and that's you and me. That's everybody sitting in this auditorium. The people who don't get refunds. The whole rationale for this was a Ninth Circuit Court decision that said that it was cruel and unusual punishment for cities to criminalize people sleeping on the street if they didn't have anywhere else to go. The US Supreme Court has overturned that decision. So now cities can enforce laws that they already had on the books. This is a moot point. This proposition is designed to address a problem that doesn't exist anymore. It was written by the Goldwater Institute, which has a long history of opposing taxes. So my personal opinion is that there's an ulterior motive here. And, we don't need to pass this proposition to fix a problem that doesn't exist, raising our taxes in the process. Okay, any questions on 312?
Well, I'd like to point out for people who live in the city of Sedona, there is no property tax. So this would not impact city residents if it should it pass. However, there are taxes at the county level. So it would impact, we all pay property taxes to our respective counties.
Thank you for that addition, Holly. Okay, next slide. Prop 313. We've got 3 more to go. This is third from the last, and we've now reached the QAnon portion of the program. This one would require anyone who's convicted of sex trafficking minors to serve a life sentence in prison with no possibility of release. Again, mandatory minimum sentencing. This measure was inspired by a film with ties to QAnon conspiracy theories, which profiled a man who claimed he saved children from trafficking, but who was later sued for sexual misconduct himself. So there's that. This measure is unnecessary. Under our current law, courts can already and do already impose very harsh penalties for sex trafficking, as they should, and judges can and do stack those sentences, creating what is effectively a life sentence. But we believe that that should be left up to the courts, and we should not be passing a mandatory minimum sentencing law. Also, it's sloppy language. Everyone here has seen a crime drama where a victim has been approached by law enforcement and they say, hey, we want to put you in this situation to try and, get so-and-so to say, on your hidden mic, that they're doing this illegal thing so we can prosecute them. This proposition does not leave room for that. It would wrap sex trafficking victims up in the mandatory minimum sentencing. This was pointed out to the lawmakers who passed it, and they chose to do nothing. So I guess when something is based on a QAnon conspiracy theory, rational thought flies out the window. But this is a no from us. It does not do what it purports to do. It is dangerous, and we are urging a no vote. Questions on 313? All right, next slide. 314, you may have heard this one called Show Me Your Papers on Steroids, or maybe SB 1070 2.0. This one does a lot of different things, makes it a state crime to cross a federal border without identification, gives local police immunity to arrest anyone they even suspect of crossing the border illegally, and a host of other things. What it does not do is fix immigration or the border. There is no parameter for how arrests would happen. There's no requirement that officers actually witness a border crossing. There's no funding for new border patrol agents or immigration judges. It doesn't address the asylum system, and it would be expensive. Estimates are $325 million a year. So remember, this is a legislature that is cutting things. We are under a deficit, and our legislature has been cutting programs. There's no funding for any of this. And Yavapai County is one of the 13 counties in the state of Arizona that has no DPS officers patrolling the roads after sundown. So I believe it's Maricopa and Pima that are the only ones, so Yavapai and Coconino County. And this would make that worse by pulling funding from already strapped law enforcement agencies. Even supporters, Yavapai County Sheriff David Rhodes went down to support the measure, went down to the legislature, but also said, if you guys pass this, I'm going to be back here looking for the funding I need to implement this. Where is that money going to come from? The state does not have it. Business groups are opposing it. Greater Phoenix Leadership, Greater Phoenix Economic Council, even the right-leaning Arizona Chamber of Commerce warns that Arizona businesses will pay the price. So this is one that if you're out talking to neighbors, I strongly urge you to talk about this one, because polling does show that Arizonans seem to think it's a pretty good idea. So we're urging a no on 314. Any questions before I move to the last one? Okay, next slide. Prop 315, this one's a little arcane, so I'd ask you to bear with me for a minute. Rulemaking is something that people really don't understand. Agency rulemaking. It is designed to bridge the gap between state statute and implementation of state statute. And there are always gaps. Rulemaking fills those gaps with, trained experts whose job it is to make sure that laws are implemented smoothly and do what they were intended to do. So this one would block our state agencies from creating rules that cost us more than what is actually a very small amount in the government world, which is $500,000 over 5 years. That's basically one person sitting in an office doing nothing with no budget and no staff. So if your rule covers any more money than that, the legislature would then be required to pass laws to fill those gaps instead. This ties regulators' hands. Rulemaking is critical for protecting us from everything from pollution and contaminated food to workplace hazards and rising drug prices. It's critical to managing our groundwater. It could go a long way toward addressing Arizona's out-of-control ESA voucher program and instituting controls that are more in line with what we see in public schools, those stringent controls. We already know that it takes months, sometimes years, for bills to become law. What are people supposed to do in the meantime if there are problems? So, senior care facilities, for example, have been in the news. Regulatory development is critical to keeping those people safe. If we don't have regulatory development, that is going to hurt people. That's going to put those people in danger. It upends the balance of power. It's chaos. And so we really encourage a no vote on 315. All right, last few points. Everyone asks us about school boards. Save Our Schools Arizona is doing that work, sosarizona.org. So if there's a hole on your DORR ballot card, check this resource. Next slide. I'm just going to blow through these. We can make a real difference here. We were able to unseat 3 judges last cycle. We came within a hair's breadth of getting Bill Montgomery. And I really believe that we can get Justices Bullock and King off the Supreme Court. Our graphics get shared virally on social media. We would love to run, sponsored social media ads. We'd love to print some more flyers and give them to groups that are canvassing. That requires funding. So, if you wanted to throw us a few bucks, we sure wouldn't say no. You can do that at cebv.us. Next slide. These are the links, but they all redirect to the same place, the azvoterguide.us. So you can take a photo of this screen if you want, share the QR code, but that URL that I gave you will work just as well. Thank you for bearing with me. Our ballots are long, and it is our goal to make sure nobody is confused. So I really appreciate your time and attention, and go forth and vote.
Wow, that was terrific. Thank you. You see why it's so important to continue down the ballot and to know what's happening there? Some of these things are just absolutely outrageous.
Yeah.
So please tell everybody you know, complete the whole ballot. These things are important. Next is Annette Spicknard. She is, again, city manager of City of Sedona, and she is going to talk to you about a proposition that she cannot endorse one way or the other because she is a city employee. However, on the ballot guide, DORR has recommended a yes vote on this. Annette, thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay. Proper space here. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Annette Spickard with the City of Sedona. I'm going to speak to you about Proposition 483, also known as the Safe Place to Park. So next slide, please. And as you heard, as a city employee, I can only give factual information and not make a recommendation one way or the other. But I do want you to know that in going out to the community, I've spoken a few times on this topic already to some different groups, and I appreciate DORR being willing to have me come and give you information today. I did also extend myself to the Republicans of the Red Rocks, I think they're called, to provide the same information, and they declined to schedule me. So if you hear any complaints that the city only presented to you all and not to the Republicans, that's the reason why we did offer to go speak to them, but they said no. Okay, so what is the Safe Place to Park? For those of you that have been in the community for a few years, you know the city purchased the Cultural Park property on the west side of town with the intention of using it for housing in the future. In the meantime, the city has been well aware of struggles with workforce and workers in our community that do not have a place to live and are sleeping in their cars. And so our city council decided that while we're in the process of constructing housing units, that they would temporarily rezone 5 acres of the cultural park to allow people to legally camp overnight in their cars at that location. You may not know, or you may know that Sedona does not allow overnight camping in the city. And so any location that would be used for a safe place to park would require the city council to rezone that parcel to allow for overnight camping. And this is the location where they chose to do that. Next slide, please. The design of the program is to accommodate up to 40 cars at that location. The city would enter into a contract with the Verde Valley Homeless Coalition to manage the program, which would be the reviewing people for eligibility, the site management and oversight of the campers during the evening, that type of thing. As it's noted, it's only between the hours of 4 p.m. and 8 a.m. So each car full of persons or just one person would have to leave in the morning. The city has received a grant from Arizona Department of Housing to pay the expenses of the program. The grant ends in June of 2026, which is also the same time that the zoning allowance ends as well. So they've only rezoned the property to allow for overnight camping through June of 2026. And so the thought was that when the program ended, we would have housing units available to help transition people into housing. Next slide, please. This is just a map of the cultural park to show you where the designated parking area that was rezoned is, which is in that corner. It's approximately, I want to say a quarter mile, half mile from any houses, and is primarily bordered by commercial uses. Next slide. So why is this on the ballot? After the council adopted the zoning change, there was a citizens petition that collected enough signatures to put the question to the voters in November. And the council allowed that to go forward. So it is on the November 5th ballot. And it's pretty straightforward. A yes vote on 483 means that you are voting yes for the zone change, which will allow the Safe Place to Park program to happen. And a no vote says that you don't agree with the zone change and therefore the program would not be able to be implemented. Next slide. This is fairly wordy here, but this is to highlight the eligibility requirements to participate in the program, and the city council designed this in order to support people that have a connection to Sedona and are workers in Sedona. And that's what this is about. And again, Verde Valley Homeless Coalition, if this passes, would be responsible for administering this and admitting people into the program based on the criteria. And next slide. So here are a couple questions that we get frequently about the program, about whether it be a homeless encampment and who can be in it, and why did the city do it, and what would happen if the referendum doesn't pass. The city has a more detailed frequently asked questions page on our website where you can get more information. If the referendum does not pass, then we will, as staff, be back to the council to ask for direction on what they would like to do next. And we will be speaking with Arizona Department of Housing about what options there are for the homeless funding that they've allocated to this program and what we could do with it between now and June of 2026. So let's see, I think that's the last slide, or I mean, there's one more slide, just to let you know where to go to get more information, and to feel free to reach out if you have questions of the staff. We're happy to answer those, but again, we can't, recommend one way or the other how to vote. So appreciate the time this morning. Nice to meet everybody, and look forward to working with you.
Stand in your place.
Oh, excuse me. I am sorry. I keep moving. I'm just
Fidgety.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about, the application process. And for how long, it sounds like from, voting for this, that the program is just for 2 years. The city hopes to have workforce housing available. The other thing that I observed was that employers need to fill out the application. What, for somebody to participate in this program. How often is it adjudicated? Does the employer let the agency know that they've fired the employee or they've moved away? What's the evaluation or adjudication procedure involved?
Okay, well, that's a very detailed question. So my understanding is that the Verde Valley Homeless Coalition would be the one that would sort through who's eligible for the program and verifying all of that information with the employer or the documentation that connects the person to Sedona. And my understanding is that there's also a review board that would handle any disputes over whether somebody's in or not in, or any complaints. So I can't really answer your very specific question about what happens if somebody gets fired by their employer or anything like that. But I think it's a very almost daily verification, as people check in. At 4 o'clock each day, they need to have that documentation. Yeah.
I can just add something. It's not the employer who fills out the application, it's the employee.
Right, but
If you want to reverse the slides back to the one that has eligibility criteria, I can't remember the title of it, but that might help.
No, they have to bring proof of employment.
Oh, I see.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they bring their proof of employment. Mhm. And I think there was a question or two in the back.
See if there's any questions.
Oh, thank you for being here. I
You're
just was curious about, on one of your pages, it suggests that disabled or retired people could.
Correct.
Stay there. What does that mean? Like, as a retired person, I can stay there?
Well, it's seniors or disabled persons without housing.
But they're not workforce, right?
Yeah, and this goes back to federal laws around housing fairness. And so we're required by federal law to serve disabled and senior citizens.
And also, what type of vehicles are allowed? Do you know?
I think they need to be in working order. They need to be registered in Arizona and Sedona. They need to have insurance. So I think
Campers or cars, vans?
I believe so. Yeah.
Well,
There won't be any tents or anything like that allowed outside of the car itself. And then the city would be bringing in shower facilities, restroom facilities, and cooking facilities to support those folks there.
and can you say anything about the construction that's going on, how that's going? You suggest that there's some buildings they're also building.
No, I apologize. Let me clarify that. So the city has just started the master planning process for that 40-acre parcel that is referred to as the cultural park. We also call it the Western Gateway. That process is just starting, so there's no construction happening on that site today. But we do have a couple of city-owned parcels in other parts of Sedona where we are putting out RFPs to construct apartments. And then we also have private developers on their own private property that are building multifamily units, some with assistance from the city and others 100% privately funded. So we have a variety of different workforce housing units in the process of being constructed in other parts of Sedona, but not at this site specifically.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that the city's working on finding ways to help with not only workforce, but homeless also. So thank you.
You're welcome. And then I don't know if there's questions on the Zoom. It's hard to see what the chat says. It doesn't show the full chat box.
Usually our back-end person, Shelley, would, if you ask her.
Oh, okay. Shelley, do you have questions in the chat room that you would like to ask me?
Shelley, you're
You
muted.
hear me?
Now,
Okay.
Oh, okay, good, because you weren't able to hear me before. Okay, yeah, there's been a little discussion here about some people are saying it's going to be a generic homeless park, and now you're admitting it's not just for workers. And I think there's this kind of the final comment of somebody who read the bill. The criteria says a person disabled by mental illness of drug addiction may meet the criteria if they have a car and if they park their car overnight and then leave. So if you could, I guess, just maybe reiterate about the non-workers who will have access.
Okay, so I think again, the criteria to meet for disabled persons is probably found in our federal laws, and that the Verde Valley Homeless Coalition would abide by that. Excuse me. But there will be rules in place at the site, you know, so we're not going to permit drug use to happen and things like that. And there will be on-site management. And so I think the federal laws probably would prevent the city from discriminating against people on the basis of their disability beyond the fact that they're disabled. They would need to provide proof of disability, which can be done in several different ways, you know, through SSI or whatever verification of a disability that they've already have. I don't think it would qualify if they just arrive and say, I'm disabled. We would need actual true verification of disability through some other source. And they still need to have a connection to Sedona in some way.
Okay, and then there's another comment here. Perhaps the city manager would like to invite folks to the community consultation on the Sedona plan for the park later this month, and give us some insight on the Sedona plan.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We just sent out a press release the day before yesterday. I believe the Red Rock News has already posted it, at least on their Facebook page, that on October 24th at the Hub at the Posse Grounds, we're holding our first public interactive workshop on planning for the Western Gateway or the Cultural Park site. So you're definitely invited to come to that if you would like. We also will have online ways for you to submit public comments to us to gather for that process. It will be a one-year process, so there will be multiple times that we'll be interacting with the public on that topic. This is just the first of many, so if you'd like to join us, it's in the afternoon on the 24th, and I'm happy to forward that press release. I believe the City Council already has it, but we can certainly give that to DORR so that you can circulate that to people with the specifics of it.
Okay. Two has a question. Oh.
Thank you. I have a question. You did mention that the park was for, I think, 2 years. So
it's a little less than 2 years because of the election being in November. So the authorization is through June of 2026.
Right. So what happens to these people who live there after the whatever term you have? What's going to happen to them?
Well, so during the time that the program is active, the expectation with the Homeless Coalition is they are working with these people as well, like a case management sort of interaction where they're helping find them resources and get them connected with housing opportunities all the way along. So trying to work with individuals to find them permanent places to live. But at the end of the program, yes, folks that still have not found housing still won't have housing. But we are trying to work very hard to get to a point where we can have places for them to go.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Annette. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Our last speaker, and I know we're a little bit over, but we started a little bit late, so we just want to give you the full ballot, is Kathy Kinsella. She is a council person here in Sedona, and she will speak about Props 479, 482, and the question about the Sedona Unified School District.
Thank you, Ellen. Hello, friends.
Stand right in here, Kathy.
Yes, this is very professional. There's actually a mark on the floor. I've never been on stage that's like, watch your mark. So yes, there are 3 more questions. This is a very long ballot, as was pointed out. These questions that I'm going to cover are going to be at the very end of your ballot. So there is, as Melinda pointed out, only 27% of Democrats fill out their entire ballot. Please do something to change that statistic. It takes so many votes to move things at the top of the ballot. If you think about it, for president or statewide propositions, it takes thousands of votes, tens of thousands of votes to move the needle. When you get down to the end of the ballot, to these questions, some of these things pass by double-digit numbers, 40 votes, 70 votes. It makes a difference. Your vote is your voice. You have so much power down at the bottom of the ballot. Please vote your entire ballot. So the ones that I'm talking to you about are actually 2 of them are the same question, but it just depends on whether you live in Coconino County or Yavapai County. They are both what we call, in fancy terminology, base expenditure limitations. Okay, what that means is the counties take in a certain amount of revenue. They take it in through taxes, whether that be property tax, sales tax, whatever. They take in revenue, but the state limits how much they can spend. All this does, and again, this is, if you live in Yavapai County, it will be Prop 479 on your ballot. If you live in Coconino County, it will be Prop 482 on your ballot. All this does is change the amount that they can spend of the monies that they have already collected. It's like having money in your bank account and there's a problem with your roof, but you can't fix your roof because the state's telling you you can't spend the money that you have to provide a service that you need. So all this does is changes it from, in Yavapai County, it raises it by 7.9 million, and in Coconino County by 7.7 million. Of additional funds, again, that they already have that they can spend. This will not affect taxes. This does not raise property taxes. This will not raise sales tax. This will not affect the taxes that are being collected at any stage, just what they can spend. Was that clear to everybody? Any questions on that, either from the audience or from Zoom, Shelley?
Nothing from Zoom.
Oh, yes,
We have
Melinda.
This is Melinda.
This is Melinda. Just want to say, if you want further rationale on these, CEBV does have a county propositions explainer at azvoterguide.us, and we are recommending yes on both of these as well.
Thank you. And DORR has looked at this since these are local issues. DORR has looked at this carefully through a committee, and DORR is recommending yes on these issues. Again, your taxes will not go up as a result of these. The last question that I'm going to talk to you about, and it is probably the very last question on your ballot. It's so far down, it doesn't even have a number. It's just going to say question. And the question is to authorize the Sedona Unified School District to be able to sell the Big Park School. Now, this is somewhat controversial because there's a lot of emotion attached to these questions, right? Big Park School, the fact that it closed, the fact that there was a merger of the schools and children are now being transported, in most cases, over to the West Sedona School or down to Mingus, depending. But what's important to realize is that's 6 years ago. It's 6 years that this building has stood not serving our school children. 2018 is when that happened. The building has been in deferred maintenance for the most part ever since. So it becomes more and more expensive for the school district to support this building, and things aren't happening to support this building. 6 years our population in the last census has gone down. Our youth population has gone down. Yes, there's an emotional attachment to the building over in VOC, but it's not fulfilling its purpose that it was built for. It's not fulfilling a need to the school district, and yet it is a financial albatross to the school district. Funds are being diverted from other building maintenance at the other buildings and programs as well, not just physical structures. So DORR is recommending a yes vote to authorize the school district to look into selling the building. Now, the building could have sold to another government agency. You may have heard, I just want to touch on that because this was out there. But there was no deal. There was no real proposition for that ever to happen. There is no identified buyer. This allows them to explore that possibility and start going down that route to identify a buyer to sell the building. People say, oh, but the library is in that building, or the building does this or that. Again, this may or may not affect that. We don't know, because if a potential buyer is identified, that potential buyer would come forward and say, the school meets my needs and the zoning meets my needs as it is, or they will say it doesn't and we'll need to go through a zoning change that would, if the changes are going to happen in the use of the building. You don't know until there's a buyer identified. All this does is give the authority to the school district to start down that path to look to sell the building, to free up those resources for the kids that are in the school district now. Are there questions to that proposition? It's not a proposition, question. It's a question.
It's not the question.
Yes. All right, well then, thank you. I'll turn it back over to Ellen. And again, it was pointed out, Tyler said 25 days to the election. That's 25 days to the election, not 25 days to voting. Voting has begun. Voting began yesterday. It's now. Now is the time to be talking to your friends and your neighbors and letting them know. Please pick up the wonderful cards that DORR has, which are just quick primers. I don't like saying cheat sheet. Primers, just little notes that you can have. Please spread the word. Again, it's so important that people vote the whole ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Melinda. Fabulous program. Did you guys get something out of this?
Yes. Good.
Good, good. That's the point. We have also asked people who are interested to have a ballot party in their home. We will come, and Melinda won't come from Phoenix, but DORR will send somebody to your home. We did one on Wednesday in the village of Oak Creek. I see some of the people here. Apparently I didn't thoroughly cover everything. So, but if you want to have something like this, a small gathering with your neighbors where they can ask questions, please come forward to DORR, let us know, and we'll arrange something.
Ballot party tonight.
Kathy's doing her fourth one tonight. So if people like to have a little bit of this, and you don't have to make a fancy meal or anything, just please do this. So again, hopefully next time we see you, we'll be at March to the Polls, Parade to the Polls, but if not then, come to the ballot watch party. It's soon. It's November 5th. We'll be at El Portal. We'll be starting around 6 because the East Coast stuff will be happening. Volunteer, Tyler is here. I went canvassing with 2 last weekend. We had a blast. Sally Caruso volunteers her home. She let Tyler stay there for a while. I mean, this community has come together like you would not believe because we are united in our cause and we are proud of that. And so thank you for coming to learn more about your ballot. We'll see you soon.